The next point that we're going to talk about is this idea of stewarding your resources. So if you're going to lead leadership really well as a communications director, then you need to have a heart that is stewarding the resources that you have really well. Really, this is the idea behind this is to honor God, to honor the leadership, to honor the church that you're a part of. So we want to make sure that we're stewarding the resources really well that we have been entrusted with. And so when we do that, then we're able to get our ideas across in a way that is, it's humble. It's out of a humble heart, a humble position where it's like, hey, I want to make sure that we are taking care of maybe the people on our team. We're taking care of the budget that we have to work with. We're taking care of our facilities. We're taking care of whatever it is that we've been entrusted with. When we come at it through the lens of like, hey, we want to make sure we're stewarding well what God has given us, then leadership will be much more on board with our ideas, or maybe even our limitations, if that's what you're trying to communicate. So when we come at it from that perspective.
That's so good. And one of the things that I thought about, right, when you said that is time, right? Time is that one thing, that one resource that we can't get back, right? Now, from your leader, from your from the standpoint of leading your leader, I going back to the last thing that I said, talking about presenting alternatives, is you save them time, right? You want, and to a degree, you want your leadership making the least amount of decisions that they have to, right? In the sense of, they have a lot of things that they're doing. So, for example, instead of asking your leader, hey, can you give me a couple of verses that you're thinking of, or a theme for this, or whatever that may be. One of the things that I find, it's always in this, and it goes back to this idea of planning, but bringing up ideas, right? Bringing up ideas and why based on that time that you spent with them, because what that does is you save them time, right? When you save your pastor, your leadership time, your ministry gets better. So again, this is this idea of being an owner, right? When you save them time, your ministry gets better because they can focus on other areas that are more important, right? And then what happens is when you do that, the ripple effect of that is now you guys are doing things in advance. You're not waiting for your pastor to make a decision on something that if you had just created a list of ideas and proposed something to them, could have got done right away, right? Because again, they're also juggling, trying to steward their time in the right way. So by you identifying key ways to just help them in the decision making process by either coming up with ideas, coming up with alternatives, having a proposed budget laid out. If you haven't checked out our video on event promotion, I highly recommend you do. When you do these things, you help them steward their time. When you steward their times, you guys can make decisions better and faster. When you make decisions better and faster, then you can actually get the ball rolling. So now you're not going to wait 3 days before the event date to try to get something printed out or whatever you may need, because you've already planned in advance, right? Just from the simple act of trying to save your leadership time, it's a ripple effect. It's a snowball effect, right? And my encouragement is identify ways in your own ministry to save your leadership time. If you guys are in a meeting and you heard him bring something up, make a list of that, make a note of that, and come in with some ideas. Because trust me, they want it.
Yeah, so there's a idea or a principle in the Bible: if you're faithful with a little bit, then you get trusted with much. And so I think this is one of the big ideas behind the stewarding your resources. We just want to be able to be trusted with more. When you're taking care of equipment, when you're taking care of the finances of the church, we've all been at the place where we've had to make a last minute order of postcard mailers or something like that. And then you have to pay the extra, whatever it is, $80 to get it rushed. Like, we've all been in that position. so if we're stewarding our resources well, we're saying, hey, we don't want to just throw an extra $80 towards this project because we're not being responsible. Let's just make sure that up front we're taking care of the details so that we can win in that area financially. So the church, and it's God's money, so let's make sure we're honoring that really well. But that really builds trust, and that's one of the things I found, that as I had that mentality of like, hey, I just want to make sure we're taking care of the resources that we have. It added a level of trust with my leaders, the leaders that were above me, of like, hey, Michael's going to make sure that we're not wasteful. We're not being wasteful of whatever. So we should probably listen to what he says, so that we don't want to be wasteful either. Like, we want to steward God's resources well. Also, stewardship is of your team. So you might have maybe there's a staff member, or maybe there's volunteers that work with you. Man, when you take care of them and that comes out like, hey, I'm just trying to take care of you, that type of thing. Let's make sure you maybe you use Planning Center to schedule people and all that stuff. That's stewardship. Like, let's make sure we are in advance communicating, what the needs are and your commitments and those type of things, because we're stewarding it well. And so that's a big part of it too. And then also communicating to your leadership above you of like, hey, listen, I don't want to have to make my volunteers like spend extra time, because again, in our industry, whenever we're up against deadlines, it can happen where you're just staying up really late trying to get a project done. Dennis, you ever done that? You ever stayed up really late trying to get a project done?
24 hours, literally.
I think we've all got some stories like that.
Uh,
Yeah, it's last minute. We're trying to get it done. I remember running out the door of the church before the alarms would set at midnight, like just trying to run out the door and, get projects done and make it out there. So we just need to make sure that we're communicating that value of like, hey, it's not that I don't want to do this. It's just we want to make sure we're taking care of what God has given us, both in terms of like the finances, the facilities, the equipment that we get to use, and the people that are serving under us. We want to make sure we steward them as well. And one of the results that I found is that as I do that, I get entrusted with more. Like, I can ask for a new piece of equipment, and I'm more likely to get an approval, because in our industry, like, equipment is expensive. Like, I remember asking for a camera, like a new digital DSLR, camera, to be able to take pictures better. And then this was back when DSLRs were being used for video, and like it was a new thing. And it was like, oh man, I can use photo lenses to create video. Like, this would be awesome. So I remember putting in that request. Hey, listen, I think we can take our production to a higher level if we got this. I think it was like a Canon 6D or something like that. We can use lenses and all this stuff. I remember making the case of that and saying, hey, it's gonna cost like, I think it was like $5,000 at the time, something like that. And I remember getting approved. And in fact, I remember not only did I get approved, it was like the lead pastor. And I remember being in the room kind of pitching this idea. And he was like, why don't you get two of them? I was like, what? I don't know if I need two, but 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 that's what we want to do. He just trusted me that, hey, I'm going to do whatever I ask for. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to maximize it. And we want to get to that point where we're being entrusted with much because we're faithful with little.
That's good, yeah. And it goes back to that whole idea of influence, right? When you do these things repeatedly, week by week, that's what you build. You build influence.